Western audiences know vampires. Dracula. The undead. A corpse that rises, drinks blood, fears garlic and crosses in sunlight. The Vetali is older than Dracula by 2,000 years. And it is nothing like him. The Vetali, described in Hindu texts dating back to the 11th century, most famously in the Baital Pachisi, a collection of 25 tales told by a Vetali to a king, is a spirit that inhabits corpses. Not its own corpse. Any corpse. It enters a dead body the way water enters a vessel, filling the available shape, animating it, using it until the body deteriorates too far to be useful. Then it finds another. It does not drink blood. It does not fear sunlight. It cannot be killed with a stake through the heart because it is not alive to begin with. It is a consciousness without a body of its own, ancient and intelligent and deeply, deliberately patient. What makes the Vetali far more terrifying than any Western vampire is this: it thinks. It speaks. It knows things. The ancient texts describe it as possessing wisdom that exceeds any living human, accumulated across centuries of inhabiting one body after another, observing one life after another from the inside. And unlike a vampire, it cannot be destroyed. It can only be displaced. It will simply find the next available vessel and continue. It has been continuing for a very long time. These are 3 accounts of people who encountered it. In 3 different centuries. In 3 different parts of India. None of them were the same afterward. Kamla was awake when she heard the door. She had not slept properly in 3 days. Grief does that, keeps you suspended between exhaustion and consciousness, never fully in either. She heard the handle turn. She heard the familiar creak of the 3rd floorboard inside the entrance, the one that Ramu had been meaning to fix for 11 years and never did. She thought she was dreaming. She was not. He stood in the doorway of the bedroom. Her husband. Ramu. The man she had loved for 22 years, whose hands she had held as he died of a fever in this same bed 8 days ago, whose body she had seen lowered into the cremation ground with her own eyes 3 days ago. He was standing in the doorway. Looking at her. And he said her name. Exactly the way he always said it. The particular inflection. The slight pause before the second syllable. 22 years of hearing your name said by one person, you know it. You know it the way you know your own heartbeat. It was his voice. His face. His hands. His posture. His name for her. But she knew, immediately, completely, with a certainty that bypassed every reasonable objection her mind tried to raise, that whatever was standing in her doorway was not her husband. Studio microphone voiceover tip, she was not. 2 words. Stop completely. 3 seconds silence. Then continue. The contrast between dream and reality is the entire hook. This account comes from a village called Bhimnagar in the Chhattisgarh region of central India. The year was 1962. The account was first documented by a local physician, Dr. Suresh Pandey, who treated Kamla in the weeks following the incident, and who wrote up the case in a private medical journal that his grandson shared with researchers in 2008. Ramu Sahu had been a gravedigger. A profession that, in rural India, placed a person in a specific relationship with the boundary between the living and the dead, a boundary that the traditions of that region treated with elaborate and very specific respect. You do not linger at the cremation ground after sunset. You do not speak the names of the recent dead after dark. You do not, under any circumstances, go to the cremation ground alone. Ramu had broken this last rule the week before his death. He had gone alone after sunset to complete a burial that the day's rainfall had interrupted. He had been alone at that cremation ground for approximately 2 hours in the dark. He came home that night looking different. Not sick, not yet. Just different. Quieter. His eyes resting on things slightly longer than normal. His responses to Kamla's conversation a half-second slower than she expected. As if something that looked like Ramu was consulting an internal guide on how Ramu would respond, and the guide was very good but not quite perfect. She noticed but said nothing. She told herself it was the cold. The dark. The work. For days later he was dead. A fever that came on suddenly and burned through him in 72 hours. The doctor called it natural. The elders of the village called it something else. They used a word that the doctor's medical training had no category for, a word that translated roughly as taken toll, meaning something had used what it needed and discarded what remained. They buried him. 3 days later, he came home. Kamla did not scream. Did not run. She has said this many times in the accounts recorded by her daughter, who wrote down her mother's story in 1998 before Kamla's death. She did not scream because, she said, screaming felt wrong. Screaming was for things that surprised you. This did not surprise her. Some part of her, the part that had watched her husband come home from the cremation ground 4 weeks earlier looking like a man consulting an internal guide, had been waiting for this. She looked at the thing in her doorway and said, "You are not Ramu." It looked at her for a long moment. Then it said, in Ramu's voice, "I am everything Ramu was. His memories. His knowledge of you. His love for you. I know what you said to each other on your wedding night. I know the name of the child you lost before your daughter was born. I know every secret he ever kept and every one he shared. Is that not enough to be him?" Kamla said, "No." The thing paused. Then it sat down in Ramu's chair, the specific chair he always sat in, the one by the window, and it said, "Then I will wait until it is." It came back the second night. And the third. Each night it knew more. Each night the performance of being Ramu was more precise, more detailed, more suffocatingly accurate. The things it said, the memories it accessed, the gestures it replicated, these were not guesses. They were retrievals. It was going through Ramu's memories the way you go through a dead person's belongings, picking up each one, turning it over, learning its weight. Room, woke and came to the doorway and saw her father sitting in his chair. She took one step toward him. Kamla stepped between them. Put her hand flat on her daughter's chest. Did not look away from the thing in the chair. Said to her daughter, very quietly, "Go back to your room. Lock the door. Do not open it until morning." Her daughter went. She locked the door. She heard her mother talking for the rest of the night. She could not make out the words. In the morning, the thing was gone. It did not return. Dr. Pandey, who treated Kamla for exhaustion and what he clinically described as acute psychological distress in the weeks that followed, noted in his private journal that she refused to discuss what had happened on the third night. Not from trauma, she was not traumatized in the way he expected. She was calm. She was simply decided. As if she had negotiated something and the negotiation was complete and she had no intention of revisiting the terms. She lived for 36 more years after that night. Raised her daughter. Grew old in the same house. Never moved. Never showed any fear of the dark or of the cremation ground or of the name of her husband spoken aloud. Before she died, she told her daughter one thing about the third night. "I told it that it could have the house. The memories. Everything Ramu left behind. I told it I would not take those things with me when I left. I would leave them here for it to keep. And in exchange it would find another vessel. It would not use my daughter." It agreed. Her daughter asked, "Was it really Ramu, at the end? Did any part of him remain?" Kamla thought for a long time. At the very end of the third night, just before dawn, it said something to me. Something that only Ramu could have known. Something that nobody else in the world knew. And it said it in a voice that was not performing. It was just his voice. Just for one moment. I think he was still in there. Very far down. Very small. Like a lamp in a very large dark room. I think he was saying goodbye.